Okay. Hi, Thessa.
Hey, Sarah. Say hi, babe.
And hi,
Hi.
everybody who's watching this, who will be watching this. My intention was to have a chat with Thessa because she's been immensely supportive to me over the years and helping me to integrate and explore in my own being. And also in the past few weeks and few days, she's been helpful to me. I feel I'm connected to a larger, loose community of humans who have all been following sort of a similar vibe, teaching for the past few years. And it's been beautiful for me to, I actually lived at Thessa's house for about a year during that time. And we're going to actually, Thessa has her baby with her, so we're going to see how this goes. But my sense is that Sia flopping around and making some noise might actually just be a perfect illustration of the benefit that I feel from Thessa, because Thessa's really able to, for me, represent the whole spectrum of my humanness. And what she shares, it's not like a teaching or anything. It's a way of experience. For me, it's a way of experiencing creation, reality, my body, in a way that is whole and includes everything. Doesn't disclude, doesn't cut off anything ultimately. So I think I'll just dive into asking her some questions, because that might help to flesh out what our purpose here is. So, well, Thessa, so in the last 100 years on our earth, there's often been a lot of spiritual teachers in a masculine body who teach something that to me feels different than what you share. What they teach feels more focused on attaining. Like I even see like an image of a penis, right? They're focused. There's a focus, and they want to go higher and higher and higher. Oftentimes in the past, they might look like a typical guru in India or something, but there's a certain sort of masculine essence teacher that wants to go higher and higher and higher. What you share is different than that. Do you have a sense of why what you share is different than that, or how what you share might be different than the spiritual teacher who wants to go higher and higher and higher?
Sure. I think it takes me back to just what I've noticed when people continually self-refer. So when someone begins a practice of referring to their physical sensation and emotion and thoughts, and they welcome whatever is arising with acceptance and allowance and surrender, which just means it's there now, and when it's ready to change, then I'll let it change. There are things that start to be revealed on an individual level, but also that apply universally. And the exclusion of what arises in that natural revealing is a cause for suffering. So on a practical level, if I'm referring to my inner experience and something arises within that inner experience, and I choose to look away, exclude it, or focus on something else and leave that experience, that inner experience out. So let's say with what you're calling the masculine approach, I see light inside of me, I see bliss, I see something exciting, and then I also see something else. Let's say I choose to focus only on the excitement, the bliss, the ecstasy, or attainment of that. Then my level of suffering is going to equal the parts that I'm excluding, what I'm not looking at, what I'm not focusing on. You want to eat, babes? Does
Does
that answer your
you
question?
think in past examples of various gurus, would they have felt suffering? Do you think they actually felt suffering, or do you think they didn't feel suffering?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I suppose
I mean, I think there's lots of guru. I'm using the word guru. There's obviously a whole spectrum. There's many spiritual teachers
yeah,
who
I mean,
don't exclude things.
the amount of, yeah, okay, so the amount of suffering depends on what you're identifying with or not, or whether there's somebody identifying there, right? But the creation of beauty in or around you is also indicative of what you're including or what you're excluding.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna bullet in there. So, so, I could be a spiritual teacher who, in a certain phase of my life or my many lifetimes evolution, I might only want to focus on a certain frequency of bliss. Um, and I might also not really have much identification there. So I might be, okay, I'm focused on only bliss, and like there might not be much identification in my being. So there might not be that much suffering, but you're saying in that scenario, there might not be that much beauty around me. People, permaculture gardens being grown and community happening and
well, if you look
stirring.
at Osho, for example,
Okay.
I mean, Osho was an amazing teacher, one of the ones that's really dear to my heart. But from what I understand, he created this big and amazing community, and then it came to a point where he had chosen to go into meditation for 3 years and basically be internal, and he allowed the community to be run by his assistant or someone who was really close to him. Well, he was internally experiencing bliss the whole time, but the community around him came to this chaos point and then just collapsed and created a lot of suffering for the people around him. Now, I can't tell you whether Osho himself experienced suffering, but certainly that's indicative of something in him that wasn't being addressed, because his creation is going to reflect back to him what he's not including in himself, right? And I'm not taking away self-responsibility of the people involved in the community, because that's also related. It doesn't change the fact that he was the head of that community, and that community collapsed and crashed. To me, that's a reflection of something that was happening in him, and that's okay.
Okay. Cool. And I think as we chat, we're going to sort of weave and loop back around. And so I still don't know if we've gotten the answer, though. If I'm a teacher who's a spiritual teacher who's only focused on a certain part of the spectrum, leading people to it, which is like only that which feels good, or only that which is light or bliss. Is that going to be excluding things? And how could it be that someone could be teaching that and not be aware of that exclusion and not feel suffering? Do you think that there is a way that they project it onto their environment? Or, I mean, not project it, but that it gets pushed? I don't know. How can someone be only focusing on a certain group of frequencies and not feel suffering? If they are,
identification, the definition for me of identification is sticking and saying, I am this thing, to the exclusion of that thing. So I am bliss, I'm ecstasy, I am all the higher frequencies, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I am that, to the exclusion of lower frequencies, whatever's not bliss.
Okay. So then I might actually have quite if I was choosing to do that, I might, or if there is a teacher who's choosing to do that, they may have a really strong discipline. So that's one's ability to actually lock in and over-identify with a certain frequency or a certain range of frequencies can actually make them seem like an even more awakened teacher. I'm only this, I'm only this, I'm only this all the time. Whenever you see me, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm round the clock this. So people are going to be magnetized to that frequency. But it's actually what I'm doing is I'm actually crystallizing in, I'm only this frequency. So it might be that I become more magnetic for a while. Maybe that could last 30 years where there's not a disruption. But it's almost like our discipline can get us to a certain point. And it's not even bad is also what I hear. Like, it's not necessarily.
Well, there's a distinction between the capacity to focus and completely penetrate and identification. So identification would be, there is a capacity to focus and completely penetrate, and I only do that because I am that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's identification with the masculine, right?
Will you say that again? Identification with the masculine is
the capacity to focus and penetrate, but to the exclusion of, what's not that, to the exclusion of expansion and complete lack of focus, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, but your question was, does that create more magnetism? Well, yeah, the more you focus on something, the more that you're going to attract people that are longing for that thing.
Mm.
So those frequencies are really key and really important for some people at certain times in their development. So that's who's going to be drawn to those frequencies, right?
Oh. So do you even think, I mean, I'm sort of taking another leap, but like, people are longing for something. Someone is really committed to that something, perhaps to the point of over-identification with it. And I'll say something, but a frequency. They're drawn together for a while. It could be beautiful. It almost feels like a relationship to me, or like a human, like boy, girl, boy, whatever, girl, girl, like where one person has something, the other person's drawn to it. They come together. There's a phase where that works for a while, where it's bliss. But then there's going to be a phase, right, where the underbelly comes up, where all this actually can't be ignored. Anytime there's a relationship between two humans, this stuff is eventually going to come up, right?
Yeah.
And so it's going to happen the same way with any teacher or organization too, I guess, right?
Yeah. Whatever is not being addressed in the polarity, the other side of the polarity will start to appear.
Okay, so it's quite common in conscious relationships to talk about, the shadow, there's a honeymoon phase, and then there's a shadow, and then it all comes up.
Right.
Okay. And again, you just said, so whatever's not being addressed in the relationship is going to come up.
Yeah, well, for that level of evolution. So if someone is really focused on bliss states, for example, and someone else is attracted to that bliss state, in order to completely integrate a bliss state so that it becomes inherent, stable, and constant throughout the rest of your existence, there needs to be a healing of whatever is not that in the consciousness. So it's beautiful to model a bliss state for people to begin to move toward. The thing is, though, whatever is not the bliss state has to be included and allowed and accepted, because otherwise the bliss state will never become inherent to what you are. There will always need to be identification with that state in order to bring it on, instead of it just being there and normalized.
Okay. Would you say, what would be the shortest way you could explain, how do I heal whatever's not, you said something like whatever's the opposite of the bliss state will have to be healed.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Right. Okay. So it's actually really simple. When you feel the bliss state, you feel what's happening in your body, the physical sensations. So can you feel a state of bliss right now?
I'm going to get into a state of bliss because I'm just plug into it, right? We have the ability to do that.
Sure.
So I'm going to do that. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm like, I'm feeling it. And I'm like, oh my God, I am this. My whole life is this. It's all this. Right. And my body feels electric. And I'm even like sending it outwards, like to my world, like, okay, and my world is all this bliss. There's only bliss. There's only opportunity. There's only possibility. That's the only thing that's real. Okay.
Okay. So share some more physical sensations that go with what you're calling bliss.
I feel a turning of like gratitude and appreciation in my heart. I feel a little, a teeny bit like turned on in my womb area.
Okay.
And then as I feel that, my right leg feels like it's almost pulling back. There was a slight pulling inwards on my right thigh towards my head. Okay, bliss state. I'm only bliss. There's only opportunity everywhere in this moment. In this moment is only benefit and opportunity and bliss. Life serves me.
Do you have a sense of expansion in the head and kind of light?
Yeah, my head is like a piece of cake. My head is like just bliss, actually. The rest of my body, if I actually really were to tune into it, it feels more a little bit like puzzle pieces. Like, okay, so I have gratitude here. I think here, like if I were to really tune into it right here, it might just feel sort of a tiny subtle tightness or nothingness. But my head is just like piece of cake.
Great.
Bliss.
So you'd say it's the strongest in your head and less strong everywhere else?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that how you would put it?
I didn't have that association at first, almost because I couldn't even feel my head. It just felt, but as you're bringing my attention to my head, it's like, oh yeah, bliss is easy in my head. Only opportunity. There's only benefit. There's beauty. I see two birds in front of me on a phone wire right now. Wow, that's so blissful. That's so perfect. There's perfection everywhere, and I'm churning it. There's perfection everywhere. My legs feel a little tingly.
Okay, so which parts of the body feel like less blissful, let's say, or even no bliss?
Well, as you say that, I feel like a sadness in the upper right quadrant of my chest. But that still feels it feels a little bit like melancholy, so it still feels a little beautiful. There's a beautiful appreciation that feels a little bit like sadness in the right side of my chest. Like, wow, I feel a sweet humbleness for humans. I feel a sadness for those who might not be able to feel this bliss. But that still feels fairly inclusive of like the general range. Do I feel bliss like deep down in my belly and my hips? Do I feel bliss down in my belly and my hips? I would probably say it feels fairly numb, or just sort of like, doesn't feel bad, but maybe just like a dark corner of a room. Especially, I'm probably a great example of this because I haven't necessarily done a lot of lower quadrant work, womb healing work or trauma healing work. But I imagine there are humans who could churn up a certain amount of bliss and actually feel it down there too. Feel it in lots of parts of their body.
Sure, but you can see already immediately that there are some aspects of your being that have high access to bliss, and there are other aspects that have less access to bliss, right? So when you go to a spiritual teacher, if you're attracted to a spiritual teacher that is holding the frequency of bliss that you're calling bliss, you're going to recognize what they're on about, right? Because you're going to go, I know that thing. I've experienced it. It's in myself. I'm going to go and sit with that teacher. This is amazing. When you go and sit with that teacher, that bliss is going to want to spread to the rest of your being, the parts of your being that aren't yet feeling it.
I'm feeling that right now. I'm imagining I'm sitting in front of a being, a human that's beaming bliss at me, and I'm relaxing. I feel like I'm like, oh, I can relax. I can surrender into this. My body is relaxing. I'm receiving, right? So I'm going into that feminine receiving, and it feels good. It feels good to feel bliss from another.
Great. So then let the bliss spread.
And it feels like, oh, I don't have to worry about anything in this moment. I can just be held. I can just relax into something.
Perfect. Just let yourself experience the physical sensations that go with that, the quality of relaxation, really taste it and revel in it.
I'm sort of just fabricating like how I might feel. I'm picturing like a few different gurus or teachers and it's just sort of general, but I'm okay.
So how would you describe the experience of bliss at the moment? Where is it in your body, and what are the physical sensations?
Well, I would say in this moment, it feels more like it's churning and circulating. I mean, I guess what comes to me is, but I'm aware, like, I can also fabricate, maybe you want to keep working with this, but I could also fabricate walking out of the building and, I can simulate any sort of.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're interested in is the state of bliss, right?
Okay.
And if you notice when you tune into the state of bliss, it's going to start to spread and change and shift, and the energy movement of bliss in your body is going to evolve. Do you notice that that's happening?
Yep. And even as right when I asked that question, sort of what came, all of a sudden something pinged into my mind that was, oh, but I'm still sad about this person in my life who doesn't love me or something. That pinged into my mind. And then I'm like, oh, that's not bliss.
Okay. So when you let yourself have the experience, I'm still sad about this person in my life that doesn't love me, what kind of physical sensations do you have?
It feels warm and it's like over here.
Okay.
But since I'm still a little bit in the bliss, like my first reaction was, oh, I can actually lend some of the bliss to that situation.
Sure.
But that's sort of what you talked about, healing. We're going to have to heal that which is not bliss.
Yeah. So you feel the sadness together with the bliss.
Yeah. So that's an experience of being able to benefit from someone's beaming of a frequency, and they're beaming it at me. And there might be a moment, right, where we're in love and I just give I relax everything in my being to that bliss. And I feel like I'm merged with it. But then who knows, an hour, 3 hours, 10 hours, a day, a week, this thing comes up. That's like, but what about this? What about this? What about me?
Your body will always show you that ping and the quality of that ping. And what is it that's keeping the ping separate from the bliss?
So the thing pings, and because I'm talking to you, I think I have a little bit more of fluidity. I know that if this thing pings, that I can sort of include it. But this, it feels like a good example sort of what you were hinting at is if I want to anchor in a certain frequency, anything that's not included is going to eventually arise.
Yes.
And it's going to include my personal field, right?
Yeah.
So any memories I have, any relationships that are unhealed, ping, 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 ping down or all around. But let's say I'm like, let's say I sit for 3 years and merged bliss with all those things. Then there's going to be always going to be outer layers, though. Also feels like then societal things are going to ping. Like there'll always be something.
Well, when there is no one experiencing bliss,
okay,
that doesn't happen anymore.
Okay.
So identity, we're talking about identity work, and that's like another layer that we haven't addressed right now.
For a minute, sort of. So let's see if there's what pieces we need. So I had this bliss. I had the bliss here. This thing pinged, and so I want to emphasize again what you said. You said if something pings and I'm feeling bliss, I can hold them together.
Yeah. The quality of whatever it is that's pinging, fully acknowledge it. You might have to just jump in and experience only that.
Yeah.
Before you can experience it together with bliss.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring your body to it, or you bring it to your body, and you taste the qualities of that ping, the physical sensation, the emotion. You let it become as intense as it wants to become, as intense as it can. Now, we haven't talked about emptiness yet, or stillness, but that's what you would allow. All the activity of whatever's pinging, you feel it together with what's still or calm.
Okay. I think I will just try. I will give like a 1 minute synopsis of my simplified understanding of what I learned from Thessa. Is that the feelings and sensations in our body. There are feelings and sensations in our body, which are also activity. And the way I can really drop into those is by scanning my body with my awareness. And those physical sensations, those churning feelings, those can move and morph into anything. They could feel like bliss. If I'm feeling bliss, then I'm churning bliss in my body. Bliss, bliss, bliss. The activity is bliss.
Mm-hmm.
If something else pings over here, that's like, I'm sad, then I can bring my awareness there and really feel that flavor too of those feelings or sensations.
Mm-hmm.
But then something else Thessa teaches, which probably we won't really go into depth into any of that now, but something else she teaches is about something called emptiness, which basically at the most simple, as I'm in this process in a session with her or in sitting with myself with my eyes closed or in a group, I'm feeling the feelings and sensations in my body. There's also another question I can ask, which is, where is the most silent and still place in relation to my body in this moment? And it's a very flowing, nonlinear system. There's really you can't get it wrong, but I just find, okay, where's the place that feels most silent and still? And I'll do that right now. Where's the most silent and still place in my body? And it can be in my body or outside my body. And to me, it feels like it's like right just deep in my belly. And so what I would do then is take however long I need to really drop in there and get that flavor of that silent and still. And the silent and still could also be called infinity or the void or emptiness. And I'll just keep talking to the camera while you hang on. So there's the silent and still in my belly.
The silent and still has different flavors at each level of realization of it. And so it's important that each person in each moment gets to have the experience of what the quality of that stillness is like now in relationship to whatever they're exploring.
Okay. So I sometimes deal with it in a more simplified way where it just sort of feels black to me. But you're saying as the deepening happens and we go through initiations, we develop a changing relationship with and deepening or whatever with that silent and still place.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. And then it shows up differently depending on our level of exploration, which is fine.
Okay. And it's interesting as we're talking and I was closing my eyes dropping into that silent and still place. Sometimes to me, it even feels like a cave, like I can just crawl into it and I'm just this eternal, unchanging thing. Then Sia was like, rah! Made this noise, and I felt it. This little surge of sort of fear went through my body.
Yeah.
Beyond my thought, it was just this quick surge of fear. I'm sure it was like, oh, is this going to be okay for the video? Or that's a loud noise or something.
Yeah.
So here I am exploring the silent and still, and then, but
which which is important because it's showing the connection between the inner environment and the outer environment. So anything, remember how we said anything that you're not including will show up somewhere. It showed up in Sia feeding back to you.
So then I could say, no, Thessa, go. Will you just go call someone to hang out with her? Can you get her out of the room, please? Mm-hmm. And then I could go back. I just want to hang out in that cave for a bit, which actually ultimately that's not either a problem either, right? We can have phases.
Yeah,
however
totally.
long or short we want, where we can actually say, no, I want to really taste this experience. I want to taste this flavor. I want to taste the nothingness, the emptiness.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to taste the bliss. Actually, and you're way too intense and dense for me. You actually need to get out of my life. I'm going to block you on Facebook. And that's actually okay.
Sure.
It's like we have this freedom to do that as long or as short as we want to, but we might also, if my goal, and there might be phases where that's really important, but there might also be phases where I'm like, oh, I'm ready to bring in more of the pings and not shut the pings out. So I'm open to, if there's
okay. So you're talking about natural cycles, right? And cycles flow naturally. There is a natural movement to being according to each person's uniqueness. That natural movement of being depends on whether there's a false sense of self blocking that natural movement. So what does that mean? It means I can go hang out in stillness right now. I'm really being called to hang out in stillness, pure stillness. If someone's screaming, I'm going to create a space where I don't need to be involved in that screaming, right? But then when the identity dissolves there, then you'll find there's a natural shift. I've gotten as much as I need to out of this space of complete stillness. Now there's a shift into a different experience. So then the different experience is embraced. And as soon as identity is released and addressed, according to the new experience, then there's a flow into the next experience. And there's this constant flow of being and a lack of stuckness in any one place.
Okay. So, and I had an image while you were talking of like, okay, I'm going to the cave and I'm going to sit in a cave for 3 years and I'm only want to be the stillness. But then in that lifetime or in even another lifetime, whatever, like I might decide I'm done being in the cave. And then there's that story, that metaphor of like, I'm ready to go down to the mountain, back into the village. So I go down the mountain, or I open up the door to my room and I walk out, or I go to a city street and there's more stimulus. So you're saying, because I've done so much work in that phase of concentrated silence, I may have actually removed some identity or identification.
Yeah, and especially if there is an actual practice to notice identity and any separation from the sense of self, between the sense of self and the absolute, finally, whatever your level of stillness or silence is, if there's any separation between you and it, that separation coming into unification dissolves the sense of self that can create blockage. It dissolves the capacity to identify and stick to one thing to the exclusion of another.
Okay, so will you explain that again? I was going to ask about identification. I think you just did it, but will you explain it again? Because I feel like my mind went blank when you just said it. So can you say
That's
it?
Great.
Yeah, I know. So
That's great.
Clearly.
I was just wondering where to start again. because it's all forgotten now.
Well, I'll ask you,
let's
so what do
see.
you mean by, what is this identification thing? What does that mean? If there's a,
Okay, so yeah, so when I use the word identification, I'm specifically talking about a sense of self that is sticking, or it's basically sitting in one place over another, sticking to one experience to the exclusion of another experience. I'm this and I'm not that. I'm this and I'm not that. That when you go and embody the experience of I'm this and I am not that, you will always see there's the separation between the one having the experience, or the one saying I, and the absolute, or what is calm and still and silent and unchanging. And when that separation resolves and the two of them come into unification, then the capacity to identify or stick to one thing to the exclusion of something else dissolves. And there just becomes fluidity.
okay.
Fluidity, there can still be individuation, there can still be uniqueness, but that individual, in fact, there's more uniqueness. The uniqueness shines through even more. It's because the oneness is recognized, then the uniqueness can shine.
Okay. So I'm gonna paraphrase or question sort of what you just said. So what I got, a few things I got was, I want to say, like, so Thessa, a summary would be for me that Thessa has a way of teaching that basically I could take any spiritual teaching I've ever read in a book,
yeah,
about the I, about awareness, about consciousness, about identity, about the I am. I could take any of these concepts, these words, these frequencies, feelings, and what you do is you actually bring them into a spatial exploration. So rather than me just reading it in a book, or it's actually the way you work and teach is I can actually play with these things in this space.
Right. So we mine the somatic experience. The physical body is the window into the unconscious mind, right? So you can take any experience that you want to explore, whether it's trauma or gardening or your relationship or a spiritual teaching, and start to feel into the physicality of the body. The physicality of the body will reveal all the elements that you've been missing in yourself in relationship to whatever you're exploring. And it will do that when there is the background or the foundational experience of what is not moving or what's silent. So it's that backdrop that allows the body to go, oh, this and that, and what about this and what about that? And so it's our attitude of willingness to see what these revelations are and to feel them and to embody them, no matter what their flavor.
Okay. Yep. I've, at certain points, the most simplest way I describe what I learned from you, Thessa, is that we take the yin and the yang and we feel it in our body. So there's always going to be something that's eternal, that's unchanging. This is this beyond infinity, the black hole. There's always going to be, and as I'm saying it, I hear you saying that our experience of that will actually keep deepening too. But there's something that's generally the eternal, unchanging thing. And then there's something that's generally that which is birthed and explored and moved and felt and purged and danced with. That's, or the stars, the comets shooting out of the blackness, the new universe building, like that's the other thing.
Yeah.
So the most basic way of explaining what I learned from you is that we can actually feel both of those things in our body. So it's not just, I'm not just going out here. I'm not saying, okay, what is that thing that exists before anything? Like I can sort of feel that. What is the thing that exists before anything? What's the thing that exists before anything? Like I might be able to feel that frequency before. What is that thing that existed before the Big Bang? But so then what I learned from you is I actually really want to find that playfully, spatially, in relation to my body. Like, wow, it actually feels like it's back here. Okay, so then we'll take that back here, and this is probably a metaphor. Like we're that's all existence is this big metaphorical map of play. So it's not really back here, but I'm just going to say it's back here.
Yeah, well, that's where you feel it. That's your subjective experience.
Yep.
That's what we're working with. So lately, how I've been thinking really simply about what I teach is I teach self-referral. I teach self-referral, and that means, in my case, there's a somatic basis for that. So what's happening in you? Like, okay, there are things happening all the time. Well, how is that appearing in your body, in your emotions, in your thought? And with the foundation of stillness or emptiness, and then the eventual exploration of, well, who is it or what is it that's having the experience? What self am I referring to?
Yeah. There's lots of layers to the exploration. Like, yes, there's this thing, and then there's this. There's the eternal thing, and then there's all the changing thing, and we can play with them in our body, but there's also like tons of layers to exploring each. We need to explore what's between them. We need to explore who's actually watching them. What is that one? So there's all these layers.
It is really simple, and in practice it gets very dynamic quickly.
Yeah. So self-refer, because when you said the word self-referral, what I heard was I want to feel bliss. I want to be the eternal nothing. And so then self-referral might be like, well, who's that one that wants to be that? Where is that eternal nothing? Where's your body?
Well, I want to feel bliss. And the simplest thing is, I want to feel bliss. When you let yourself want to feel bliss, what physical sensations do you have? What kind of thoughts come up? What emotion arises? Let your whole body, let your whole being speak about what the quality of that experience is. What is the nature of this? I want to experience bliss.
And that to me feels different. If I fully embody, I want to feel bliss. That's obviously different than what I did 10 minutes ago, which was feeling bliss. And then you would say, hold them together, hold the silent and still along with them. Who's the one? So each scenario there's all these ways to explore it. And so there's no really a destination either, because this is what existence is the constant dance and exploration and deepening of all these things, I mean, it's really, I really relate with the Tao, that term for the exploration that I've been on, and allowing nature to completely express itself as and through me and through the people that I work with, I really resonate with the way that Taoism talks about that, and the Tao being the unification of emptiness and form in complete, constant, flowing expression. Okay. And so were you saying this before, and are you implying it now? As I engage in this exploration, and I'm committed to the identity work, to the feeling, to the emptiness, eventually we do get to more of a state where there is less, the pings don't feel as disruptive. We are a little bit more able to ping, pain, sadness, someone else's pain, my pain, It's not quite, doesn't quite need to be as disruptive, but the most basic way that comes is by not locking down or identifying with any state.
Right.
Okay. I want to grab my water, which is someplace.
Okay. What happened to our window there, Beebs? I can't see anymore. Where it is? come here. You want to sit up here again with me?
Okay, Thessa.
Sarah again. Yeah.
There's obviously like 1,000 directions and things we could talk about right now, as is the nature of
following the.
And there's nothing. We never need to talk about anything, but or we could figure out what happens when I talk about nothing and you talk about everything. We do it at the same time. With our faces next to each other on the camera, and then Sia can be the bridge between them. She can express it through her body. But there is a few things that came out that feel I want to address.
Okay.
When you said identification with a state, with a feeling, identification with bliss, I felt a sort of a sweet sadness around that, because there's been times in my life where I have felt so down, so insignificant, so depressed, so anything, that if I have a gateway or a teacher or an opportunity to feel this, if I see someone who's feeling this, if I've been stuck in this, not abundance, not feeling significant, and I see someone who's radiating this, and I can like go to a course or an experience and be in their vibe of this, like that's, to me, is sweet. It's beautiful. It's sometimes I've actually experienced that, like, because this down here sucks so much, I just want to rest into this. And sometimes I even have to fight. I feel like I have to fight for this, like fight for this elevation. But so sometimes if I get there and I'm like, oh, now I'm elevated, like I want to try to identify with that. Like there's a part of me sometimes that actually wants to do anything I can to lock into that, because this sucks so much.
Of course. Well, it's the identity work that changes that opens up the possibility to go and visit the other polarity. It's the identity work, because there's basically a part of you that's saying, I am this bliss and I'm not the other thing.
I was this, and now I'm tasting this, and I really want to be this and I don't want to be that. So you're saying they're both fine explorations, but if I start to do identity work, which then I can actually dance back and forth between them and not have it feel so separate or painful,
because the key is stillness. So when you're holding the experience, whether that's being the identity or just having the experience, and there's the background of what's unchanging, it creates an opening for a shift, because there, in a small or grand part, there's a part of you that recognizes, wait a minute, I'm actually what never changes. I'm completely what never changes. So why would I be sticking to this bliss thing? I am what never changes. What's the need to stick to bliss, which is a moving, changing thing, you know? And then it's like, well, if I am what never changes, then what is the big deal actually about going to experience depression? Because I know that it's just an experience that's going to change. Even if it's changing only within itself, even if it only gets like more intense and less intense, and sometimes there and sometimes not, it's still changing, and which tells me that fundamentally I'm something deeper. So this is a particular level of realization that I'm talking about that's really important, because you start to realize, you start to realize that then the willingness to experience anything comes about, and you can experience any part of yourself. You don't have to get stuck in one or the other.
Okay, and then now this is where at one point you use the phrase identification with the masculine or identification with the feminine, because then I just thought, as you were just talking now, I thought, well, I know teachers who say, I am that which never changes. I'm that which never changes. That's all I am, is I am that which never changes. But they don't say, I'm also depression and I'm ugliness. They don't actually. So I think at one point you sort of hinted that over-identifying with being that which never changes is an over-identification with the masculine. with that side of the yin and the yang, because there's also always going to be this stuff too. So we don't want to over identify with either.
Well, okay, so you just keep doing identity work, because the way that I described that phase to you just a second ago, it's actually one phase of evolution. Then there's a next, once you do that for a while, it can really, the realization becomes, there is that which never changes, and I am that. But there's the capacity for a very thin layer of identity to be kind of like on top of the unchanging, thinking that it's unchanging. And there's also the capacity to say, I am the unchanging to the exclusion of the changing, which is, that's still identification, right? So, but it's an important level of development to have reached that. It's just that the next level of development begins to show there is never any separation between the unchanging and the changing.
Okay.
So if I am the unchanging, by definition, I am fully the changing.
Okay.
But that takes like steps of realization to go through.
And I'm even just like, so I just drew a little like circle. So there's like the unchanging. I mean, I just meant them to be two circles, the unchanging and the changing. And if I'm firmly grounded in the unchanging, then totally grounded eternally in the unchanging, then that also includes the changing. So there should be, but
it depends on the level of realization of unchanging that you're at. And even though we're kind of using language to talk about it, when someone says, I'm grounded in the unchanging, or I know myself as the unchanging, there's different levels of that. I always explore with them, well, what is your experience of I there? What do you mean by I? For me, the way I began to talk about it was, there is always unchanging, and I am that, except there is no I and there is no am. There's just unchanging. But that there can be that experience, and there can still be an exclusion of the changing with that. And that's okay. That's a step. Like, that's a step on the evolutionary ladder.
Mm-hmm. But to me, it feels like as there are these steps, like it feels to me like that creation or existence is relational.
Yeah.
That's an area that sometimes I don't have. Like, I know this tendency in my, like sometimes we have a tendency to like cut out something outside, but it feels like if I'm devoted to being the unchanging, and that includes the changing, there's also going to be other things that happen in life around me. And those also might indicate, they might show me how much I'm really the unchanging. Like if I say, oh, I'm really grounded in the unchanging, and that includes the changing, and then like a bomb goes off right next to me, or like 10 bombs go off, ultimately those 10 bombs could go off because I'm actually, to show me that there's actually a distortion. So it could be that, or they could just be going off to push me deeper. We never even know what the stimulus around us is also subjective. There's no right or wrong answer. If there's a disaster, right? If I say, oh, I'm in the unchanging, and then there's a disaster in my life, that doesn't necessarily mean that I was out of integrity and distorted. But what does important is that there always needs to be explored. Stimulus always needs to at least be explored. What is that here to teach?
Yeah, until there is no one left to explore. And this is like a temporary answer based on where I am right now, right? Mm-hmm. Until there's no one left to explore, and the experience of inner and outer is no longer separate. There's no longer a sense of inner being separate from outer. So, like Sia's noises, they're all related to our conversation, and vice versa. Our conversation's related to Sia's noises. Because we're not separate. Her noises are not separate from the conversation, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. I feel the paradox, the ultimate paradox, and not knowing, and I also feel the that And like Thessa or other beings on the planet actually do have the ability to sort of guide me into, I can, part of me is like, oh, I just don't know. It's just all a paradox. Feels too complicated what you're saying. But there is also sort of a system. Like you're also sort of have a way that you can guide people into the subtle explorations of these things.
Yeah, well, it's important to me that I have a system that guides someone always back to themselves.
And yeah, and you're not just saying, I am the unchanging, I am the unchanging, I am everything, I am the unchanging, I am everything. And you're something, always go back to yourself. Like you're not just telling them that. Oh, your screen froze a little bit. So in this moment, Thessa is the unchanging, and I'm the changing. Oh, well, she said her daughter unplugged the computer and it died. There we go. There's the environment responding. We'll see if she joins us again. She said, she texted me, Sia unplugged the computer and it died. Talk about merging inner and outer. I know that I'm still recording with y'all right now. I don't have a ton to say, and I think even just sitting, I feel like I'm integrating everything Thessa was just saying, pondering it and integrating it. So maybe you are too. No, I'll send her another invitation. I'm actually still disintegrating. And now I'm thinking of some new questions. I sent a link again. Yeah, I can maybe while we wait for Thessa, I'll just take this moment again to share my basic understanding, the way I work with their system currently. Super quick, I sit, I close my eyes, I scan my body. I imagine that there's like a laser, like in Star Trek, scanning my body from the top to bottom or the bottom to top. And I just start to notice any feelings or sensations. I've heard it said that this is like the quickest way to drop into the unconscious. Just noticing feelings or sensations. And obviously you would have to do this right now too in order to really feel what I'm saying. So you just close your eyes, just begin to notice the feelings or sensations. And maybe there's places that don't feel like there's any feelings or sensations. That's fine. You can just skip over them. Or you could actually bring your awareness to that place, like in the middle of my calf. And sometimes when we bring our awareness to some place, all of a sudden there's a feeling or sensation there. So you just work your way, or I work my way through my body, maybe for about 2 minutes, just noticing whatever wants to be noticed. And that's a really quick, easy way to drop myself in. I see it as like the inner landscape. When I do that process, it's like I feel I'm in the inner landscapes, which I think could be called the unconscious, subconscious realms. Then I can ask, okay, now where's the most silent and still place in relation to my body in this moment? And it can be inside or outside. It's very nonlinear. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's this like turning map. So where is the most silent and still place in this moment? Just texting Thessa again. So I've dropped in, I felt the feelings and sensations. So now I ask, where is the most silent and still place in relation to my body? And from where I'm at, I just say, just pick a place. Where feels the most silent and still? And right now I'm feeling like in my left calf. So I don't just want to like stop there. I actually want to get a taste of the flavor of that silence, that stillness. So I really bring my awareness, my third eye, my imagination to that place. And I really anchor in my awareness to that silent and still until I get a real feeling of the eternal unchanging, or just unchanging. I don't even need to stick in eternal, but I really want to feel something that feels unchanging, silent, still. Depending on what I'm wanting to do, sometimes I can really rest there. I could even like climb into it with my awareness. Like I imagine myself climbing into a cave. I can go deep into it. I can probably go, really like it's a portal or a tunnel and really crawl into it. It sounds like from what Thessa says, there's all sorts of things to explore. And then at the most basic, what I do when I'm ready is I actually hold the silent and still and the feelings and sensations in my awareness at the same time, simultaneously. So I hold all the feelings and sensations in my body along with the silent and still in my calf. And when you do that, something happens. Sometimes I imagine it like 2 acupuncture needles in at the same time. Something happens, they start to move and dance. Or like, if that's hard, you can even just bounce back and forth between them. Okay, so just really land in the silent and still, get that flavor, and then land back in my body, the feelings and sensations, and then keep doing that. Or you can hold them at the same time. So that is the most basic thing. Even if we just do that, for me, it is like life-changing. If I'm super triggered and I'm rared up, like, oh, my body feels so intense and I'm so triggered. What I can do is actually say, where's the silent and still? And I can find it. Okay, it's in the center of my belly. And I can actually like rest there. I can actually almost like climb in. There was one time when I was white water rafting with a group of people, and I'm on this raft, and someone said something that triggered me so much. I felt so unsafe. I felt like, oh my God, we're supposed to be working as a team, and like they're lying. They're not even like, and they're putting me in danger. I'm on this raft with them and they're lying to us, and like I'm in danger, and my whole body felt like it was churning, this trauma of like not being safe, rafting on this crazy river and not trusting the people around me. Whoa. So what I did in that moment was I found that silent and still place inside of me. And I was like, I am not all this chaos. I am the silent and still. I am that which is eternal. And I like repeated that again and again and again. I am that which is eternal. I am that which is eternal. And I'm crawling down paddling down this rafting, this river. And I am like fully anchored in that silent, still blackness in my body. And it's felt quite safe. I actually do believe like my whole being was rooted in this really safe, eternal, unchanging thing. And so especially because I was like already going down this scary rafting thing, I didn't need at that moment all the other trauma that was churning through my emotional body. That was too much stimulus for me to work with. So I just grounded in this so that I was able to get through the river. But ideally, after I'm done, when I'm ready, if I'm in a room and I'm really triggered with someone, and it's like, if I were to talk from this place, I'd be screaming. Maybe I just want to rest in the silent and still. And there, again, there's ways that Thessa teaches this. Sometimes it can be accessed deeper in our womb. Texting her again. So, but like when I'm ready, when I feel a little more centered and safe, then I can actually expand back and include all the feelings and sensations. Then I can include the pings, the traumas, the memories, whatever's getting brought up. And I can hold them simultaneously. I can even do it later. Like, wow, I'll see if I do it now. Like, I don't remember what the person said on the raft, but it really bothered me that they weren't being honest about being honest. They were putting me in danger. Okay, does that bring, and I can scan my body again. What do I feel in my body? What is the flavor? We can keep returning to that simple act of just scanning, feeling the feelings and sensations, and getting a taste of the subtle flavor. And then holding it with silent and still. Just that alone, that exploration of the yin, the yang, the eternal, and all the activity, holding them together is, for me, been super potent. There are many, many more layers, and we can really take like the most advanced, highest spiritual teachings, the most ninja, I am not the exploration of, I am not the I am the awareness, I am this, all these different angles of the crystal to explore existence with. And we can get more and more refined about who is the one looking, where am I looking. But what I learned from Thessa is it all can happen spatially. I can actually play with it spatially. I can look back at things. I can ask, what's the one looking back? It becomes, to me, this beautiful dynamic play. And it can still, again, be quite ninja, but it can all happen within the sphere of me. And then it's super cool because really we realize there's that activity that I felt when I'm triggered and I scan my body, that's activity, that part of the yin and the yang can also be experienced outside my body. So there's this a baby who goes wah! And like that's actually, I can scan that just in the same way. Just scan it, feel it, taste the flavor, it, hold the silent and still with it. Something happens. So, but again, there's many more layers and not levels, but things to add into that exploration. But at the most basic, that's what I do, and it's super helpful. There's one other question I want to ask Thessa. But she says her Facebook is frozen, so I think it's worth waiting to ask this question. But let's see. So I use what I learned from Thessa. I use it in my own life. I use it if I'm triggered. I use it if I'm doing my inner work, if I actually want to dive in and do some healing work. You can actually use the basic things that she teaches. You can actually layer it into any system. Like maybe I did a year of energy healing training and I got trained in all the chakras, and this is what you do with these chakras. And like, you can take any system. Like I can go in my third chakra and do work in my third chakra, and then I can actually hold it with the silent and still, along with the silent and still. And I can do identity work. So we can still use all the modalities, maybe craniosacral. Maybe I'm like moving their head, or subtle movements in the head, and I'm working with their cerebral spinal fluid, whatever. Maybe I'm holding someone's sacrum and someone's head. Super subtle, super subtle. There is actually a way to layer on what Thessa teaches. So I'm moving, I'm feeling this super subtle flow of the craniosacral fluid, and I'm asking, where's the most silent and still place in relation to my body? And I'm feeling that. While I'm doing this, I'm holding that silent and still. I can also do identity work. I can do identity work in me while I'm working with a client. I can be doing the identity work. Who is the one holding these hands? Who is the one feeling the cerebral spinal fluid? And that's quite beneficial. I can I am the eternal unchanging. I can fully jump into that while I'm feeling that changing in their spine. And that's really profound. I can hold silent and still. I can just do identity work. Say, who is the one? Who is the I? I can do it with them. I can invite them to speak while I'm holding their activity, that which is changing subtly, even if it's super subtle. I can ask them to speak, and I can ask them, where's the silent and still place? Where's the most silent and still place in relation to your body? Who's the one? Who's the I? There's all these things we can do, but we can use it in relationships. I can be sitting with someone who I'm having a conflict with, or someone who I'm in a love relationship and I want to go deeper and deeper, and maybe it's their turn and they're talking, and I just ask them, okay, what do you feel in your body? And now where's the silent and still? And again, Thessa has a process for this that she suggests. I'm sort of just summarizing. Let's see. Okay, maybe we'll be complete. So I think I'm complete in my interviewing of Thessa. And I just gave a real loose summary. Yeah, so hopefully we've touched on some ways of experiencing, ways of navigating that have felt helpful to you, that have helped you to expand your sense of what is possible, that have helped you to expand the playfulness that we can actually explore all of this with. And when I say playfulness, I don't just mean bliss. I actually mean we can playfully explore the density in the belly. I can ask, like, wow, show me this person who really wasn't kind to me 5 years ago. And I can actually feel that again in my body, and I can call it back up. Oof, feel it, call up that state, and then I can say, now where's the most silent and still place? Feel the silent and still. I can do identity work. So it's all included. There's no thing we cannot do with this system. It is all included because that's what we are, right? That's what I am. I am this. And you and I together, we're, and then our world, our earth, and then, there's the belly in the earth, and there's all the layers in the earth's core and crust, and everything can be explored and play with. And then also we can surround ourselves with people or teachers or guides or friends who are also committed to, like, who is that I? Who is the I who is exploring all that stuff? What is that eternal thing that's unchanging? And we can also commit to that, but we can merge them, right? We can dance with them. There doesn't need to be as much of a separation. Okay, so we're complete. Thessa says, thanks y'all.